Hey everyone, it's Wolfgang. I want to talk about an update to my earlier TikTok video that I posted on my channel on January 19th of this year. This is an update on TikTok's survival. I want to set a foundation here for understanding what I'm going to present here. The U.S. intelligence agencies know and use propaganda techniques in other countries. There's a lot of reasons for that. Is it controversial? Yes, it's probably controversial, but it's just a fact of life that every country that has an intelligence agency or an intelligence service wants to have an influence over opponents. So U.S. intelligence agencies know and use propaganda techniques, and they fully recognize that TikTok is engaging in those sorts of activities. I'm going to explain what's going on behind the scenes with TikTok. It will become clear what they're actually doing as we go through here. And the other thing I wanted to point out is, although TikTok's lifespan is coming to an end, the vast majority of Chinese goods in the U.S. are not being forced to be sold to U.S. owners, including high-tech products. Apple relies on China for a lot of product sourcing, parts sourcing, and none of that's changing. It's just the propaganda effort being made by the Chinese government using TikTok. So here's the timeline. On January 20th, a 75-day delay was imposed. The Supreme Court the day before had upheld the banning of TikTok in the United States. The next day, the new president came into office, extended the lifespan of TikTok by 75 days. Their last day is April 5th. ByteDance has since come out and said it has no plans to sell TikTok, citing the Chinese government's opposition to the sale. So even after they were given a 75-day reprieve, ByteDance, which is the parent company, the owner, the developer of TikTok, has come out and said they don't want to sell TikTok because the Chinese government is opposed to it. So who has submitted bids? We've all heard about this in the news. A lot of groups have submitted bids to buy it, and nothing has happened. If the product was actually for sale, we would have heard that one of the offers, or maybe a couple of them, were being taken seriously, and there were discussions underway to choose the best buyer. None of that's happened. The groups that have submitted offers include Microsoft, Oracle Corporation, Elon Musk, Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. He put an investor group together. Mr. Beast, I think his name is Jimmy Donaldson, put an investor group together and made an offer. All these guys have made offers to ByteDance. A U.S. sovereign wealth fund is being discussed to buy it. And this is the most interesting one. Perplexity AI submitted an offer allowing ByteDance to still own 50% of TikTok. So Perplexity AI basically made the best offer of all these by telling the Chinese government, we'll let you keep half the product, and they're still not willing to sell it. And anyways, even if they did accept a 50% ownership share, there's no chance the CIA and the FBI will allow the CCP to own and operate an addictive propaganda tool operating in this country. So let me just explain a little bit about what kind of techniques are being deployed. They're very subtle, and there is a little bit of defiance on the part of TikTok users about this, because it's very hard to know when you're being influenced. Something we've all experienced in our lives, if we go to a new school or if someone new comes to our school, we can adjust our behavior to accommodate someone if they seem influential. If your parents want you to adopt new behavior, that's a form of coercion too, a subtle form of coercion. And sometimes in some families, it's not very subtle at all. It's basically change your behavior or else there will be consequences. But there's a spectrum of how to get an opponent or someone else to behave in a way that's more favorable to you. So TikTok is using subtle and slow propaganda, and it's basically these two things. The first, they are collecting data on user preferences, understand the opponent population. It's one thing to be, across the ocean and to make educated guesses about what the U.S. population really believes, what they're interested in. It's another to put an application in their hand that will directly collect the information that will inform what what that population is interested in. So the first most important task for TikTok is to understand the opponent population, or more precisely for the Chinese government to learn and understand the opponent population. The U.S. is the opponent. We're the opponent. We're a superpower, the biggest superpower, the most powerful, country on the planet to this day. And China sees us as an opponent. We cooperate in a lot of things, but we're still an opponent. As an example, China would like to take Taiwan back. They will pay an amazingly stiff penalty if they actually do that. The economic outcome for them would be horrific. So they're not going to do that, at least not now. So that was the first part, is to learn and understand the opponent population, and then to influence the entire population of the opponent if possible, with a goal to dull the tip of the opponent's spear. In other words, if you've ever heard of, if you've ever watched stories of armed conflict, there's usually talk of we softened up the opposing side and then we went in. We softened up the opponent in various ways. And softening up means learn what they like, show them what they like, and when we show them what they're interested in, at least a portion of that will include things that will make them start thinking, slowly start being more accepting of our positions. So when the United States wants to, it does the same thing. They go to foreign countries that are dictatorships, like what we did to the Soviet Union. The Voice of America was a propaganda tool to try to get the population of the Soviet Union to become more in tune with how the United States was run, with more freedoms, accessibility to food, and products that the Soviets didn't have. So influence the entire population, learn what they like, show them what they like. A portion of that will include things that will make our population more agreeable to their side, to dull the spear of the opponent, to dull the tip of the spear of the opponent. So there's a large user base for TikTok in the United States, and a lot of those folks have been influenced in subtle ways they probably don't recognize. Over time, it's China's goal to make the entire population more accepting of their way of life, which is a loss of freedom, loss of freedoms, loss of speech rights, free speech rights. We've already seen some of that, right? So China has a way to operate their country. The United States has its own way to run our country, and they're not the same. And China would like to influence our population. It's much less costly than going to war with an opponent. So no sale of this product is going to occur. I said that in the first video that I posted on January 19th. They're not going to sell the product. They've already come out and said ByteDance has no plans to sell it because the Chinese government is opposed to that. So an objective of the CCP when they created this product was not to create a good software product. They didn't put all that effort into making that product addictive just because they wanted to create a cool product. That was not the objective, right? They wanted a tool so they could figure out what we liked. Once they know what we like, they can use that to introduce ideas about their way of life to slowly get us used to accepting it, to get us acclimated to the way that they think. So the objective of the CCP was not to create a cool product. And besides, China's pride would be damaged when an opponent forces them to give up a halo product. Everybody knows about TikTok all over the world. Everyone on the planet knows about this conflict right now between U.S. intelligence agencies forbidding that product to exist in this country under CCP ownership. Everyone has heard about this conflict. And it's a halo product for China. That's one of the reasons they're not going to give up that halo product. And they don't need the money, right? The CCP owns all of China. The CCP owns China. They don't need the money selling this product. That's why they're not accepting any of these bids. We've been at this for a month now with some of these people making bids, and they're not going to accept. They're not going to sell that product. They don't need the money. Their national pride would be damaged if they gave in. And the CCP's goal to attract, to neutralize, and indoctrinate over time is very similar to what Joseph Goebbels and Hitler did in World War II to Germany, to German people. Propaganda, hardcore propaganda. Pravda and Izvestia in the Soviet Union did the same thing. So ByteDance is taking a more subtle, lower key approach. Let's learn what they like. Let's show them what they like. Let's introduce things when we show them what they like that will make them over time more accepting of the way that we think. So it's not going to happen. The CIA is not going to allow that the CIA, the FBI, and so on, will never allow a 50-50 deal. The only way this is going to work is if China sells the entire product, including the source code. They're not going to sell the source code. If you go back to this video that I posted on January 19th, Secret of the TikTok Ban, I fully explain the problem with China selling the source code. The source code is what software engineers type in when they actually create the program. When you download an app, you're not getting the source code. You're getting a compiled version of that. I don't want to get too technical. I'm a software engineer, okay? But you're not getting human readable code when you download an app. You're getting something that works, that your hardware understands, your device understands. But China will not sell the source code, and I explained why in my video from January 19th, Secret of the TikTok Ban. You might want to look at that. It's, I try to not be too technical, and I explain it in a way to make it easy for the average person to understand. So you might want to look at that, but they're not going to sell this product. They just are not going to. And you might wonder, why don't they just pull the product then? The longer they can keep collecting information, it suits their purpose of attract, neutralize, and indoctrinate. I would say the vast majority of users of TikTok do not realize whether or not they've been subtly influenced, in subtle ways, been influenced to be more accepting of loss of freedoms, loss of freedom of speech, loss of personal freedoms. In Germany, recently it's become clear that the government has already failed in that regard. They've failed to stand up for citizens' personal freedoms and free speech rights. The same thing in the UK. So in the United States, it's codified in the Constitution about personal freedoms and free speech. So it's just not going to happen. And this was an admirable, if you're in the CCP, this was an admirable attempt to sneak a Trojan horse product into the U.S. to collect data and then start feeding us. Once you know what somebody likes, you can use that to feed them information that gets them in a frame of mind that they don't realize it, but over time they become more favorable to your ideas. You're feeding them stuff they like, and maybe 5% of it is turning their opinions towards you in your favor. So it was, for the CCP, it was an admirable objective to have this Trojan horse propaganda tool, but it's coming to an end. And I go back to ByteDance saying it's not going to sell it. So that's the expected outcome. So the update for TikTok survival is it's not going to survive. They're not going to, there's an outside chance that China will figure out a way to save face, because having an opponent force you to sell your product that's very successful is embarrassing, and it feels like you're being victimized. From the Chinese people's perspective, if they saw that happen, they would think, wow, we're not a very powerful country. We let another country force us to give up one of our halo products. Many of them don't realize or don't sympathize with the fact that the Chinese Communist Party is trying to coerce the U.S. population slowly, in a subtle way, over time, right? So, but it's a dangerous product. And I would say a majority of people don't recognize it because they're not really familiar with how propaganda works. And to that end, I want to mention something. I wanted you folks to look up online on Wikipedia, for example, propaganda techniques. There's a good solid page on Wikipedia and elsewhere, but I looked at the one on Wikipedia also that was pretty thorough in its coverage of propaganda techniques. If you read that, I didn't want to go into it here because it's a little bit discouraging to know that there's a group of humans here and there's another group of humans here, and we're not getting along to the point where we're trying to coerce each other. It's kind of a negative thing, and I didn't want to go into detail in my video, but I had to explain a certain portion of it to drive the point home that TikTok is on its way out. They're not going to, ByteDance has said they're not going to sell. So if you have any questions about any of this data, and again, I'd recommend that you look up propaganda techniques online, and you will pretty quickly realize what TikTok has really been doing and why our intelligence services are wanting that product gone. You'll understand why. So if you have any questions, please post in the comments. And I wanted to do a follow-up to my earlier TikTok video because a lot of time has, because we've been at this for a month now, and they're not talking to anybody seriously. So I thought it's a good time for an update. So ask me any questions you'd like to in the comments. But I want to thank everyone for watching. Go back and look at that earlier video that was on the 19th of January. What was the title of that? secret of the TikTok ban. And I want to thank everybody for watching and have a great day.